Today your reading assignment is in the Myth folder, and you are supposed to read pages 5 to 16. This will be the audio version of pages 5 through 16. So make sure you are following along. This video will not show you a picture of the pages starting after page 5, so you'll need to follow along in your own Myth folder. Remember, Myth folders look like this. They are all numbered, and you should be able to grab one of them. Let's go ahead and start on page 5. In olden times, when men still worshipped ugly idols, there lived in the land of Greece a folk of shepherds and herdsmen who cherished light and beauty. They did not worship dark idols like their neighbors, but created instead their own beautiful, radiant gods. The Greek gods looked much like people and acted like them too, only they were taller, handsomer, and could do no wrong. Fire-breathing monsters and beasts with many heads stood for all that was dark and wicked. They were for gods and great heroes to conquer. The gods lived on top of Mount Olympus, a mountain so high and steep that no man could climb it and see them in their shining palace. But they often descended to earth, sometimes in their own shapes, sometimes disguised as humans or animals. Mortals worshipped the gods, and the gods honored Mother Earth. They had all sprung from her, for she was the beginning of all life. Gaia, the earth, came out of darkness so long ago that nobody knows when or how. Earth was young and lonesome, for nothing lived on her yet. Above her rose Uranus, the sky, dark and blue, set all over with sparkling stars. He was magnificent to behold, and young Earth looked up at him and fell in love with him. The sky smiled down at Earth, twinkling with his countless stars, and they were joined in love. Soon, young Earth became Mother Earth, and the mother of all living things. All her children loved their warm and bountiful mother, and feared their mighty father, Uranus, Lord of the universe. The Titans. The Titans were the first children of Mother Earth. They were the first gods, taller than the mountains she created to serve them as thrones, and both earth and sky were proud of them. There were 6 Titans, 6 glorious gods, and they had 6 sisters, the Titanesses, whom they took for their wives. When Gaia again gave birth, Uranus was not proud. Their new children were also huge, but each had only one glowing eye set in the middle of his forehead. They were the 3 Cyclopses, and they were named Lightning, Thunder, and Thunderbolt. They were not handsome gods, but tremendously strong smiths. Sparks from their heavy hammers flashed across the sky and lit up the heavens so brightly that even their father's stars faded. After a while, Mother Earth bore 3 more sons. Uranus looked at them with disgust. Each of them had 50 heads and 100 strong arms. He hated to see such ugly creatures walk about on lovely Earth, so he seized them and their brothers, the Cyclopses, and flung them into Tartarus, the deepest, darkest pit under the earth. Mother Earth loved her children and could not forgive her husband for his cruelty to them. Out of the hardest flint she fashioned a sickle and spoke to her sons, the Titans. "Take this weapon, make an end to your father's cruelty, and set your brothers free." Fear took hold of the 5 Titans, and they trembled and refused. Only Cronus, the youngest but the strongest, dared to take the sickle. He fell upon his father. Uranus could not withstand the weapon wielded by his strong son, and he fled, giving up his powers. Mother Earth made Pontus, the boundless seas, her second husband, and from this union sprang the gods of the watery depths. And from her rich ground grew an abundance of trees and flowers, and out of her crevices sprites, beasts, and early man crept forth. Cronus was now the lord of the universe. He sat on the highest mountain and ruled over heaven and earth with a firm hand. The other gods obeyed his will, and early man worshipped him. This was man's golden age. Men lived happily in peace with the gods and each other. They did not kill, and they had no locks on their doors, for theft had not yet been invented. But Cronus did not set his monstrous brothers free, and Mother Earth was angry with him and plotted his downfall. She had to wait, for no god yet born was strong enough to oppose him. But she knew that one of his sons would be stronger than he, just as Cronus had been stronger than his father. Cronus knew it too, so every time his Titaness wife Rhea gave birth, he took the newborn and swallowed it. With all of his offspring securely inside of him, he had nothing to fear. But Rhea mourned. Her 5 sisters, who had married the 5 other Titans, were surrounded by their Titan children, while she was all alone. When Rhea expected her 6th child, she asked Mother Earth to help her and save the child from his father. That was just what Mother Earth had been waiting for. She gave her daughter whispered advice, and Rhea went away smiling. As soon as Rhea had borne her child, the god Zeus, she hid him. Then she wrapped a stone in baby's clothes and gave it to her husband to swallow instead of her son. Cronus was fooled and swallowed the stone, and the little god Zeus was spirited away to a secret cave on the island of Crete. Old Cronus never heard the cries of his young son, for Mother Earth set noisy sprites outside the cave. They made such a clatter, beating their shields with their swords, that other sounds were drowned out. Zeus and his family. Zeus was tended by gentle nymphs and was nursed by the fairy god Amalthea. From the horns of the goat flowed ambrosia and nectar, the food and drink of the gods. Zeus grew rapidly, and it was not long before he strode out of the cave as a great new god. To thank the nymphs for feeding him so well, he gave them the horns of the goat. They were horns of plenty and could never be emptied. From the hide of the goat he made for himself an impenetrable breastplate, the aegis, and now he was so strong that Cronus could do nothing against him. Young Zeus chose Metis, a Titan's daughter, for his first wife. She was the goddess of prudence, and he needed her good advice. She warned him not to try alone to overthrow his child-devouring father, for Cronus had all the other Titans and their sons on his side. First, Zeus must also have strong allies. Metis went to Cronus and cunningly tricked him into eating a magic herb. He thought that the herb would make him unconquerable. Instead, it made him so sick that he vomited up not only the stone he had swallowed, but his other 5 children as well. They were the gods Hades and Poseidon, and the goddesses Hestia, Demeter, and Hera, all mighty gods who right away joined forces with Zeus. When Cronus saw the 6 young gods rising against him, he knew that his hour had come, and he surrendered his powers and fled. Now Zeus was the lord of the universe. He did not want to rule alone. He shared his powers with his brothers and sisters. But the Titans and their sons revolted. They refused to let themselves be ruled by the new gods. Only Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus left the Titans to join Zeus, for Prometheus could look into the future and knew that Zeus would win. Zeus freed the monstrous sons of Mother Earth from Tartarus. Gratefully, the 100 armed ones fought for him with all their strength, and the Cyclopses forged mighty weapons for him and his brothers. They made a trident for Poseidon. It was so forceful that when he struck the ground with it, the earth shook, and when he struck the sea, frothing waves stood mountain high. For Hades, they made a cap of invisibility so he could strike his enemies unseen. And for Zeus, they forged lightning bolts. Armed with them, he was the mightiest god of all. Nothing could stand against him and his thunderbolts. The Titans fought a bitter battle, but at last they had to surrender, and Zeus locked them up in Tartarus. The 100 armed monsters went to stand guard at the gates to see that they never escaped. Atlas, the strongest of the Titans, was sent to the end of the world to carry forever the vault of the sky on his shoulders. Angry with Zeus for sending her sons, the Titans, to the dark pit of Tartarus, Mother Earth now brought forth 2 terrible monsters, Typhon and his mate Echidna, and sent them against Zeus. They were so fearful that when the gods saw them, they changed themselves into animals and fled in terror. Typhon's 100 horrible heads touched the stars. Venom dripped from his evil eyes, and lava and red-hot stones poured from his gaping mouths. Hissing like 100 snakes and roaring like 100 lions, he tore up the whole mountains and threw them at the gods. Zeus soon regained his courage and turned, and when the other gods saw him taking his stand, they came back to help him fight the monster. A terrible battle raged, and hardly a living creature was left on earth. But Zeus was fated to win, and as Typhon tore up huge Mount Etna to hurl at the gods, Zeus struck it with 100 well-aimed thunderbolts, and the mountains fell back, pinning Typhon underneath. There the monster lies to this very day, belching fire, lava, and smoke through the top of the mountain. Echidna, his hideous mate, escaped destruction. She cowered in a cave, protecting Typhon's dreadful offspring, and Zeus let them live as a challenge to future heroes. Now at last Mother Earth gave up her struggle. There were no more upheavals, and the wounds of the war soon healed. The mountains stood firmly anchored. The seas had their shores. The rivers had their riverbeds, and ox-horned river gods watched over them, and each tree and each spring had its nymph. The earth again was green and fruitful, and Zeus could begin to rule in peace. The one-eyed Cyclopses were not only smiths, but masons as well, and they built a towering palace for the gods on top of Mount Olympus, the highest mountain in Greece. The palace was hidden in the clouds, and the goddesses of the seasons rolled them away whenever a god wanted to go down to earth. Nobody else could pass through the gates of clouds. Iris, the fleet-footed messenger of the gods, had her own path down to earth. She dressed in a gown of iridescent drops and ran along the rainbow on her busy errands between Olympus and earth. In the gleaming hall of the palace, where light never failed, the Olympian gods sat on 12 thrones and reigned over heaven and earth. There were 12 great gods, for Zeus shared his powers, not only with his brothers and sisters, but with 6 of his children and the goddess of love as well. Zeus himself sat on the highest throne with a bucket full of thunderbolts beside him. On his right sat his youngest sister Hera, whom he had chosen from all his wives as his queen. Beside her sat her son Ares, god of war, and Hephaestus, god of fire, with Aphrodite, goddess of love, between them. Next was Zeus's son Hermes, the herald of all gods, and Zeus's sister Demeter, goddess of the harvest, with her daughter Persephone on her lap. On the left of Zeus sat his brother Poseidon, the lord of the sea. Next to him sat the 4 children of Zeus: Athena, the twins, Apollo and Artemis, and Dionysus, the youngest of the gods. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, Apollo the god of light and music, Artemis the goddess of the hunt, and Dionysus the god of wine. Hestia, the eldest sister of Zeus, was the goddess of the hearth. She had no throne, but tended the sacred fire in the hall, and every hearth on earth was her altar. She was the gentlest of all the Olympians. Hades, the eldest brother of Zeus, was the lord of the dead. He preferred to stay in his gloomy palace in the underworld and never went to Olympus. The gods themselves could not die, for divine ichor flowed in their veins instead of blood. Most of the time they lived happily together, feasting on sweet-smelling ambrosia and nectar, but their wills clashed and there were violent quarrels. When Zeus would reach for a thunderbolt, the Olympians would tremble and fall to order, for Zeus alone was stronger than all the other gods together. This now ends the reading that you are supposed to do today. Make sure you carry on with whatever task you are supposed to do next.